pronunciations I'm probably going to get wrong, but I believe this is Fe Lotos, I think is how you pronounce that. They have various different ways of how you pronounce these things, but it's loving oneself, to intent on one's interests, selfish, fond of self, selfish, lover of own self. So this is where it says, but know this, that in the last days perilous times will come, for men will be lovers of themselves. And what's so fascinating about this is, and it really got me to think about the rise of narcissism. And I wanted to see if there was any truth in this, if there was truly a rise of narcissism. So this is a article from 2016. Narcissism, the rise behind the the science behind the rise of a modern epidemic. And so it goes in to talk about what is happening especially among younger generations, why narcissism risen. So this is pretty interesting. So narcissism is defined as selfishness involving a sense of entitlement, a lack of empathy. So narcissism and a lack of empathy are associated with each other. So this is even more interesting because it actually correlates with the phrase, the word they're unloving, which I'll get into here shortly. And it says, and a need for admiration as characterizing a personality type. So in the late 1970s, researchers Robert Raskin and Calvin Hall developed questionnaires designed to assess empathetic and narcissistic traits. The narcissistic personality inventory, that's the narcissistic trait questionnaire, and the interpersonal reactivity index, which is the empathetic questionnaire. So for 3 decades, they have been having college students go ahead and take this questionnaire. So since the 1980s all the way to today, they've been having questionnaires so they could see the trend on this. So back in the 1980s, most of the college kids tested about 70% total of the college population, more on the empathetic. I'm trying to see exactly how, who tested more empathetic by 70%. Nowadays, the college kids score higher of 70%, or 70, this is what it is, 70% of college students score higher on narcissism and lower on empathy today. Whereas the inverse was true of students in the 1980s who tested more empathetic by 70%. So a complete flip-flop in 3 decades. Wow. So higher narcissism, lower empathy. And we know that empathy is associated with being able to empathize with other people, to be able to, and that's associated also with connection with other people, having a deep, meaningful relationship. And so this also correlates with the idea of increased loneliness and isolation of people, especially among younger generations. Technology plays some part in it, social media as well. But they say that even kids that have plenty of friends actually, talk about how lonely they are, describe how lonely they feel, because they're not actually truly connecting with other kids because they're lacking empathy to be able to have a deep, meaningful relationship with each other. And so this is fascinating, especially in correlation with 2 Timothy chapter 3. But one of the rise of narcissism was social media. And what it does is called social feedback loops, and it's purposely designed to be addictive. And what it does is activation of the dopaminergic system, which is also associated with pleasure. So the constant necessity of pleasure. So you're activating the dopaminergic system, which is similar to that of cocaine. Cocaine, heroin activates that system. And gives us that certain high. And it creates pretty much a detachment from reality for these children, for even up into young adulthood. And of course, we see social isolation occurring, not just with COVID, although that increased it dramatically. We see social isolation among younger generations increase tremendously, especially with that of hover parents. The dangers of the world. Kids don't go outside and play as much anymore. Most of them sit in their rooms on on their video games or on their tablets and don't have any real meaningful connection with the other kids. And social isolation, we know what that does, especially young children, but even older adults. One thing, it increases the risk of psychiatric disorders, increased vulnerability to dementia by up to 50%. That's what prolonged social isolation does to our brains. It also
Go ahead.
I was going to say it also shrinks our brains and also kills off neurons, which helps connect neural
When you talked to
pathways.
me earlier, you just made a statement a while ago, loneliness.
Yeah. Mhm.
And I listened to a program today. I was working, and whenever I'm working, doing stuff, I always like to put on some program, a Christian news program or sermon or something. And this lady I like to listen to, she was talking about people are lonely today. And I thought that's twice I heard that name. So there may be some people on our show tonight that you're lonely.
Yeah.
You're really going through a time of loneliness. And I'll tell you, the greatest cure for loneliness for me is reading the Bible. I mean, amazing. I mean, you can even read the book of Ecclesiastes. It brings somewhat of a hope, and it kind of pours over my heart. I know it does for me. Whenever I'm feeling lonely or kind of down or whatever, I'll just go to the scriptures and start reading the scriptures or pray and talk to the Lord. And that's really, truly, Michael, that's the cure for everything. It's Christ in us, the hope of glory, is the cure for everything. But loneliness is a huge problem with our world today.
Yeah, no, it is. It's amazing. And like I said, from what I can tell and from what studies indicate is that in the surveys and various different means of research is that the lack of empathy is one of the primary problems. Even if you're a part of a group, if you're not having deep, meaningful connections with people, you're going to feel like you're not a part of it. You're going to feel left out. You're not going to feel like you're really accepted into something. And I think that's a struggle for these kids. What's happening is just like I was talking about with the identity crisis earlier, is that they're trying to figure out where they fit in, and then they'll become trans or gay or whatever it may be and try to fit into that group. And then they figure out, well, I don't even fit in here as well because these people aren't really empathizing with me. I'm not connecting with these people either. So where do I fit in? Suicide rates have increased. Depression has increased dramatically. And it's no wonder. I mean, it's wild. Loneliness can affect our physical health dramatically. Decreases immune functions, sleep disturbances, cardiovascular disease, hypertension, stroke, metabolism disorders. It's unreal. Loneliness, they equated loneliness to be equivalent to smoking 15 cigarettes a day.
Wow.
That's how dramatic it really is. 61% of U.S. adults have stated that they feel lonely. 61%. It's unreal. We've lost our sense of being able to connect and to be able to communicate with one another. And of course, the political divide has only made it that much worse. Now it's like everything's politically driven, even our day-to-day conversations with people. And it's been programmed. We've been programmed to talk like that, and it's wild. And like I said, nerve cell damage. It's just unbelievable. And it was very fascinating because they even talked about the neural connect or the neural system that actually is associated with hunger and thirst is the same system that drives our social connections. So we actually hunger for social connection. We're actually built and programmed to hunger after it, just as we are. And if we starve ourselves with that, it literally deteriorates our bodies. And deteriorates our minds.
We're the biggest, the fattest society in America ever, probably because we eat a lot. People they get lonely too. So hey, I'm not judging anybody, but I'm trying to lose weight. But the beautiful thing about that, Michael, in 2 Timothy chapter 3, he talks about lovers of pleasure, lovers of unlovely, and without self-control, brutal, despisers of good, headstrong, haughty, lovers of pleasure, rather than lovers of God. Everything right there in 2 Timothy chapter 3 is exactly what we're living in. But the beautiful thing about that is when you read down there, Paul said, but God will deliver us out of it all. And that's
absolutely. Yeah.
That's what's beautiful about that. But